Y2K. How can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines, radios, throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. We must survive. 5 years. Thousands, air filtration, water filtration.
Coming at you live from the frozen tundra that is East Central Alberta, Canada, broadcasting via the auditory and visual mediums to my fellow delinquents across the globe. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I am Toolman Tim. Today is October the 24th, 2024, and this is episode 469 of Workshop Radio. How are all my fellow delinquents out there? It's great to see you. It's great to be back, and it's great to be seen. We have been enjoying some unseasonably warm fall temperatures here. I mean, not super warm, but as far as Alberta goes, we will take them. So let's open up this week in prepping, like we always do, with a rule to live by. I put it into the good old Google random number generator, and it ended up coming back with number 2222. And you may have heard these stories before, but I love telling it. Rule 22, always fix a loose screw. Now, what does that mean? Well, you've probably heard the old-fashioned saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Well, that is true. And it all goes back to when we bought our first house on the Bay of Fundy. And it was an old 130-year-old home. And Becky said, honey, do you notice that the hinge on the bathroom door is a little bit loose? And I said, yeah, I do. And so I left it at that, just ignored it. And then each day I would come home and it would get progressively looser and looser and looser without really worrying about it or thinking about it until, 6 months later, Becky reminded me again. And I said, honey, you don't have to remind me every 6 months. I'll get around to it. Until one day I come home from work, an excessively stressful day, come home, open the door, maybe a little harder than I should have, and the door come off in one of my hands. So one of my favorite, and I don't know how this got so low on my list, 22, but it's true. Always fix a loose screw. And really what that means is if you're walking around in your yard, if you're walking around your home, don't be like lazy ass Tim, because I still fall prey to this sometimes. Don't walk past it. Take 2 seconds to fix something. Take 2 seconds to lube something up so you don't end up wearing out a part. Take 2 seconds to put a little tape on something and secure it. Take 2 seconds to put a ratchet strap around a 14-foot package of jams that I had to haul across town today. And I did. I took 2 seconds, wrapped the ratchet strap around it once, cranked it down, and Bob's your uncle. So anyhow, rule number 22, always fix a loose screw. I hope you guys live by it as well. All right, let's check out who we have here in the delinquent community this evening. I see L2 Survive. He seems early this evening. Good to see you in here. Bonnie Blue 2A from Missouri. Always great to see you. I love Bonnie. I don't believe we've ever met in person, Bonnie, but you're always so encouraging and always have some great things to share. So I love to see it. Digger, you're in here. Good to see you. Byron Roberts, great to see you. Stray Kitten, laughing at my jokes. I mean, my stories. And my neighbor from Delinquent's Gully, Off-Grid Ping, good to see you, brother. So I hope everybody's doing great out there. Let's dive in to this week and let's see what we have here now. So we have, bear with me for a moment here, folks. There we go. So we are into the prepper files. That's our first segment of the week. And as we go on, I am definitely going to get us some more audio and video transition stingers for some of these new segments that I've built. But bear with me because I love this episode. I love doing Thursday shows, and this one is always so much fun. Byron Roberts wants to know, what is the drink of choice tonight? And I hate to say it, but it's almost always the same drink of choice. It doesn't matter how many cocktails I imbibe, the one that I enjoy the most is still the old-fashioned. We got some Eagle Rare. Broke into the bottle that Byron sent me not too long ago. So Eagle Rare, regular Angostura bitters, some French vanilla, old-fashioned vanilla syrup, some Italian cherries, and since I didn't have an orange, clementine rind. All right, so let's bring this in here. I was going to try to make this a little bit bigger for you guys tonight because I know it can be hard to read. So the prepper files, this is where we go back on this day in history, and we take a look at something that, if it happened during today, would probably scare us just a little bit. Here it is. On October 24th, Black Thursday. Anybody ever heard of Black Thursday? I'd heard of it, but didn't realize that it had happened on this day in October. Selling intensified was leading up to the Great Depression, the collapse of the economy. But on October 24th, Black Thursday, the market lost 11% of its value at the opening bell on heavy trading. The huge volume meant that the report of prices on the ticker tape in brokerage offices around the nation was hours late. And so investors had no idea that what most stocks were trading for. So this basically led into the massive stock market crash that ended the roaring 20s and brought in the dirty 30s, the Dust Bowl, the Great Depression. The only thing that possibly brought North America out of the Great Depression would have been the Second World War, unfortunately. At least that's kind of how it looks going back. But so on this day in history, October 24th, what year was it? Excuse me, 1929 was Black Thursday. The largest drop on Wall Street at the time. It may still be the largest drop by percentage of volume overall. Also, on this day, back in 1992, 32 years ago, the Toronto Blue Jays were the first non-American team to win the World Series. I had to throw that in there for my fellow Canucks. But yeah, so Black Thursday, folks, there it is. All right. And coming right up, what do we have for you next? Here we go.
Nothing like eating under an open sky, even if it is radioactive.
Dropping the dime precious metals.
All right. Dropping the dime, folks. We have not had, there's been a lot going on in the precious metals field, but really it's mainly just been, ups and downs in the prices, ups recently again. But today I came across it was a couple days ago at this point, a rather interesting article. And this is once again Costco. I know you guys are going to say, I'm getting tired of your Costco articles, Tim, but they just keep dipping their toes into precious metals. And this will be the first time that we discuss a non-gold or silver precious metal in Dropping the Dime. And here we go, guys. This comes from CNBC.com, so take it for what you will. You can now buy a $1,089 platinum bar from Costco. Here's what to know before investing. Now, here's the deal. I'm not a platinum fan. I've never been a platinum fan, and it doesn't mean that others won't be, but there are definitely precious metals connoisseurs out there who do like it. So if you're into something a little bit different, and I don't mean, that kinky kind of stuff, I mean precious metals, here we are. And it's a Pamp Swiss bar again. Shoppers love Costco for the affordable gas and the $1.50 hot dog and a soda. Same price in Canada as it is in the US. Recently, though, they found something new to love, precious metals. And we've talked about this, silver, gold, and now platinum. Costco began selling physical gold last year, and demand has been so hot that Wells Fargo analysts expect sales to now be in the neighborhood of $100 million to $200 million a month. That's insane. And earlier this month, the big box store began selling platinum on its website. A 1 ounce bar will run you $1,089. Costco's move into metals has made it easier for everyday shoppers to own physical gold and platinum. But it's far from the first time precious metals have been in vogue, especially among people looking to invest them. Investors tend to flock to gold in times of economic turbulence. Yes, we know that. But, as a prepper, as somebody who's into being prepared, precious metals always seems to be something, or it should be something that we're into, especially once you get to the point where you have got your finances in order, then this is definitely something to look at. Now, again, I love silver. I love gold. Not as big a fan of platinum as some folks are, but if anybody out there is into platinum, let me know. I just don't. Two things. I look at holding my wealth, but secondly, I look at the ability to sell it in a bad situation. I don't want to necessarily say a grid down or a shit hits the fan scenario, but I want to be able to offload it if need be. And if I go up to some stranger and say, hey, I got a 1 ounce bar of platinum, you want to buy it? I just don't think that has the same curb appeal, the same resale ability to complete strangers as, say, silver or gold might. Not saying that they'll buy that either, but yeah. So there you go. Platinum, Costco, seems like a match made in heaven. Let's go back to the delinquents here. Byron Roberts is drinking straight bourbon. Nothing wrong with straight bourbon. I almost find that just beautifully sweet doing that. L2 Survive says, Toolman, I watched your diesel heater video. You didn't use freedom units. We don't take kindly to those Fariner units. So here's the deal, guys. I almost always use freedom units for my videos. And even today, when I told a story on Telegram about a train. Actually, we'll talk about the train story later. I even gave it in miles. But here's the deal. Liters are so damn easy to figure with, to run numbers and crunch numbers with. And that's why I go with that when it comes to fuel consumption. I love liters when it comes to fuel consumption. Could I have switched it over? You know, I actually had a clip in this week's review where I said, you can take liters and basically call them quarts for all intents and purposes, but it didn't make the cutting room floor. It ended up on the cutting room floor. So there you go. One Step Closer says, my favorite precious metals are brass and lead. I like that. And Stray Kitten said, did you find that video about customers getting locked inside of banks for 24 hours? I did not. It totally slipped my mind, but I will try to remember to do that after this show. That would be a good article to chat about for sure. So anyway, if you guys ever have any good stories on precious metals, send them my way. I love to hear from you guys. And you guys tend to be my best source for information along the lines of This Week in Prepping.
If anyone dies while you are kept in your fallout room, move the body to another room.
The time has come. Stranger than fiction.
Here we go, folks. Stranger Than Fiction. It might possibly be my favorite segment of the week. And it's really where I get to look at some of the oddest stories that I have found recently while perusing the news. I've got a bunch of different sources that I use. Google News, of course, is one of them. I have a bunch of saved searches on there for things like prepping and post-apocalyptic and solar and disasters and all of that kind of stuff. But there's also a really good Reddit subreddit called Prepper Intel that I really enjoy. It's a great place to find it. So this is some of the places that I find some of the best news stories. Here's the first one. If you guys haven't heard about this, I don't know how I missed it at first, but it's an ongoing issue. And we're talking about Cuba, folks. Cuba suffers second power outage in 24 hours, realizing years of warnings. So the first line of this article says, Fidel Castro once called Cuba's power plants prehistoric. Now, I believe Castro has been gone a solid 10 years at this point. So if they were prehistoric when he was alive and still cognizant enough to speak, what in the hell are they now? But I'll tell you, they're on the verge of a grid collapse over there. They said it was only supposed to be out a couple of days. They've tried to turn it back on multiple times. Now, I didn't check up tonight, but I know 2 or 3 different times they've tried to turn it back on with mixed results. Let's put it that way. And here we go. The country still relies on those prehistoric power plants, contributing to the longest blackout since the collapse of its former patron, the Soviet Union. Anybody notice any correlation between Cuba and USSR? Just going to leave it out there. They're definitely responsible for some of the largest things that have ever happened in the history of humanity. The experts have warned for years Cuba's power grid was on the verge of collapse, relying on plants nearly half a century old and importing fuel the cash-strapped communist government could barely afford. Man, so that's like trying to impress friends you don't like with money you don't have. Except in this case, they're trying to keep power plants online that have long since passed their expiration date and fuel them with fuel they can't even afford, folks. What in the hell's going on there? I don't get it. Friday morning, their dire predictions come true as the entire island of Cuba plunged into the most prolonged blackout it has suffered in 30 years since its former benefactor and steady fuel supplier, the Soviet Union, collapsed. Cuban energy officials managed to briefly get the power back up to some parts of the island on Friday night. But early Saturday, the state's utility company reported another total disconnection of the system. This second one lasted 24 hours. So that is not good. I mean, when I first started hearing about the electrical grid in India and how it basically looked like a scab of wires. It was an absolute mess. They managed to hold it together for a while until they didn't. And now, I mean, they're doing okay there right now. South Africa, horribly outdated, horribly underpowered utility system, falling to pieces. And now the only communist nation in the Western Hemisphere is once again suffering from a form of collapse. And in this instance, the lack of power. Not going to be good, folks. Government officials, here we go, party line. Government officials tried to reassure the public that power would be broadly restored over the weekend, but acknowledged that they could not be sure. I know. One step closer says, how could communism fail? TikTok says it's perfect. I remember being a high school student and talking about this with a bunch of folks, and a lot of people said, communism is the most perfect system, except when it becomes practically implemented in the real world. And I don't even necessarily view it as, I mean, hey, there are anarcho-communists out there, which to me seems like a bit of a misnomer, but as long as you are 100% voluntary in whatever you're doing, I really don't see that any different than as a commune. But as far as a forced onto you political worldview, no, there's no way I want to live under that. L2 Survive says Cuba, USSR, South Africa, all places that don't use freedom units. Isn't that the truth? And good evening to Bud Conkle. Good to see you in here. So anyhow, if you hadn't heard about it, go out and check it out because things are not good in Cuba right now, folks. Chris Dixon, good to see you. Communism works until you use it on humans. Ain't that the truth? Very, very true. It's the ideal scenario until it's actually implemented. And then you discover that humans are humans and people end up needing food and work and money. And for some reason, once again, with no safeguards in place, the government ends up hoarding it all and, well, folks die. There you go. So that article came from the New York Times. I had to read it through archive.ph. If you haven't seen that website before, check it out. It's great. It'll let you get past paywalls for news articles that you don't want to support. Enough said, moving on. Here we are. Next article comes from marketplace.org. And this one, here it is. I love this article as soon as I saw it. In uncertain times, the prepper supply business is booming. If anybody's been to a prepper event in the last couple of years, you will know that political uncertainty sells when it comes to preparedness. And whether that's a good or bad thing, it's the reality of it. I remember hearing many years ago that when Obama came into office, that he sold more guns than anyone else. You look back to the Y2K scare and how that pushed a ton of people into the prepper supply business. So here we go. First paragraph. Ahead of the election, prepper meal kits have become a hit with both sides of the aisle. Emergency food supply kits, like the one seen in a now viral video, are selling at most major retailers, like, here we go, guys, Costco, Walmart, Home Depot, and Amazon. In the past month alone, Amazon sold upwards of 3,000 of a kit deemed an Amazon bestseller. Anyway, the best few weeks and months, it's been like a tsunami, said Anton Edwards, the founder of an emergency preparedness organization called International Preparedness Network, which he started in 1989. That would be a cool dude to interview right there. Around 1/3 of American adults are now spending money on prepping. Can you imagine that, guys? Go back 5 years, 10 years. Could you imagine 1/3 of Western society spending money on being prepared? That blows me out of the water. Most folks, for the longest time, couldn't spend $5 to put extra gas in the tank, let alone to spend some money to be prepared. Uncertainty, guys, it is what it is. Whether it's thinking about a natural disaster all the way up to something global, a war, a civil war, people are trying to prepare for whatever they feel like might be some doomsday scenario. The survey found that collectively, preppers spent $11 billion within a 12-month period. Yeah, I'm guilty. I definitely spend money on that. But here's the deal. 1/3 of all American adults have spent money on prepping. That tells you a few things. It tells you folks are scared. It tells you folks have some disposable income that they've managed to be able to find. And it shows you that there's a hunger for folks to get into preparedness. So if you're looking at starting a business, if you're looking at starting a YouTube channel or a content creation in the preparedness sphere, this is probably the time to do it. Now, not to take advantage of folks' fears. Anybody who does that, I think, is pretty slimy. So here, Chris Dixon, let's talk about this for a minute. Should preparedness be big business? Well, one of my mantras throughout basically my entire time as a content creator and an entrepreneur is this: you can help people and you can make money. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. So many folks look at somebody starting a business to help folks, and if you're making $1 off it, you must be a deadbeat. So here's the deal. Should it be big business? I think it should just be a business all the time. I would hope that folks are getting into it for the right reasons. The problem is that most folks don't. Most folks spend a shit ton of money they don't have right before Y2K and then return whatever they can afterwards, have buyer's remorse, just like the people who don't have the money to buy a generator right before a hurricane, use it for a week and then return it. I don't want people to do this out of fear. Simple as that. However, lots of people are going to come to it through fear. Somebody's going to come from Alex Jones or Joe Rogan or whatever it happens to be. They're going to be scared shitless and I don't know where to start. Glenn Beck's another one, used to be really good at that. I'm sure he still is. They don't know where to go. They've heard that the sky is falling, that everybody out there is out to get them, that Trump's a horrible person or that Kamala's a horrible, who cares? Whatever it happens to be, they're scared about something. And they're like, here, take my money, make me feel better. But it doesn't have to be that way. I think part of our job as being preppers, as being in this kind of worldview, is to talk people down off the ledge, is to say, listen, you don't need, you don't need to go and buy the $10,000 mil-spec after dark, that kind of thing. You don't need to spend that kind of money on anything. What you need to do is get your finances in order, get your health in order. Look out for losing a job, like Haas said. Look out for the important things. Now, this is the thing. When folks come into preparedness at this time, when things are scary, it's our job to say they don't have to be scary. Let's start with baby steps. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't spend all your money on something. Take a breath. Take another breath. And then where can we start with you? Simple as that. Now, can you start a business with that? Sure you can. Don't take advantage of folks. Don't prey on their fear. Help them out while you're along. But you can make money and help people, because some of the greatest business, well, almost all the businesses in the world started because somebody wanted to make some money. So if you want to be motivated, financial gain is a great motivator for business, but don't let it be the only gain, the only motivator for your business. All right, let's go back to the delinquents in the gully here. Red Flyer Media says, I think prepping expenditures is exploding right now after seeing what happened with the last two hurricanes. I agree. So here, let's just go down the rabbit hole for a minute. We've had two massive hurricanes that have made landfall in the eastern United States. We have the incredible political uncertainty that comes every 4 years in November for some reason. I don't know what happens every 4 years in November. You've got those, and then you got a lot of crazy shit going on around the world. Of course, you've got Russia and Ukraine. You've got the Middle East that's been basically involved in a perpetual war for the last 70 years, I think. Well, you can go back further than that, of course. And then I don't know if anybody heard the news story this week, but the U.S. finally come out and said what people have been talking about online for a couple of weeks, that there's something like, 15,000 North Korean soldiers in Russia, and possibly there to at least learn and do war games, but probably become involved in the conflict with the Ukraine. I don't like that a whole lot, but that's scary shit. People are scared, right? So we'll do our best to help them out. Stray Kitten says, only big corporations should make money. Yes, that is 100% true. And also, or the government will say, we should have the money, and then we'll dole it out where we see fit, right? One step closer. This got my first generator this month. With this year's crazy weather, it seemed prudent. Proud of you, brother. And again, a generator is a great thing to have. But if you can't afford it, or it's not in the budget at that moment, then it's not the prudent thing to do. Simple as that. L2 Survive says, if shit hits the fan, my household would be communist. My neighbor would be socialist, and my town would be capitalistic. I like it. Ed Celio, I'm late, but I'm here. Good to see you, brother. Bonnie Blue says, it really looks like World War III is going to happen unless cooler heads prevail. I'm not a pessimist. I hope you guys have found that from me over the years, that I do my best not to be a fearmonger. So I try to be optimistic. I try to look at the brighter side of things. And I truly believe that the world governments can come together and say, hey, we're not going to do this. But Bonnie, you're not completely wrong. There's a reason why I sent that article to Becky yesterday, because it was one of those that jumped up and made the hair on the back of my neck stand up a little bit, because it is scary. I'm not going to change what I'm doing, because I can't, number one, I can't affect what Putin does or doesn't do, and I can't affect what that rather rotund dude over in North Korea does either. But what I can affect is my family, my friends, our business, our financial situation, our preps. So that's what I do. I try to pay attention to this stuff, and then I leave it in the rearview mirror as I get busy building the life I want to live. So there you go, folks. We got one more article here in Stranger Than Fiction. This is a pretty good one this month. This week, where in the world did I say this month from? Here we go. I had another article saved for this one for you guys, but I couldn't get it past the paywall. So here we are. This one comes from the USDA.gov. Again, take it for what it is, but before you toss food, wait and check it out. It's happened to all of us. You're looking for something in the freezer or pantry, discover food that's been forgotten. Your first impulse is to throw it out, but wait, is it still good? My daughter, Alice, she's that way. If something's even close to expiration date, she gets nervous and wants to throw it away. Me, on the other hand, I'm the type of guy that found a can of cookies that had been packed away in the Christmas decorations the year before. And I'm like, well, I think I'll try that. So yeah, I've been fairly lucky all my life. Never had any real bad foodborne illnesses until this summer when I had the nasty bout of food poisoning from the clams. But overall, I like to live a little bit on the wild side. So chances are it's still good. Food poisoning bacteria does not grow in the freezer. So no matter how long a food is frozen, it is safe to eat. Now, guys, this stuff comes from USDA. This is interesting. Safe to eat. Foods that have been in the freezer for months may be dry, may not taste good, but they'll be safe to eat. So if you find a package of ground beef that's been in the freezer for more than a few months, don't throw it out. Use it to make chili or tacos. The seasoning and additional ingredients can make up for loss of flavor. I love that. This is crazy that this is on the USDA website. Okay, here we go. Now, what about the foods in the pantry? You ready for this, guys? This article blew me out of the water. Most shelf-stable foods are safe indefinitely, indubitably. In fact, canned goods will last for years as long as the can itself is in good condition. No rust, no dents, no swelling. Things that us preppers have been saying for years, but I came across this from last summer. No, actually, sorry. I thought that said 2023. This is an article from 2013. Maybe they don't like to talk about it as much anymore. Packaged food, cereal, pasta, cookies will be safe past the best by date, although they may eventually become stale or develop an off flavor. Also, they might get weevils in them. I'm not really sure what weevils are, but I've seen them before. As a kid, they would get into our dry goods because things wouldn't get cycled out in our laundry room / pantry. Packaged food, cereal will be safe past the best by, but they might get stale. You'll know when you open the package if the food has lost quality. Many dates on foods refer to quality, not safety. See FSIS, Shelf Stable Food Safety Fact Sheet. So what do you think about that? This came from, this is an official website of the United States government. Here's how you know. Well, anyway, so there you go. It's a .gov website, which means they should at least, well, I'm just surprised that they're willing to put this information out there, because canned goods, and again, boil it if you're worried about it. But like One Step Closer says here in the comments, if it passes the smell test, I'll give it a try. And again, depending on, over millennia, we have developed the ability to follow our nose, as Toucan Sam would say. And really, that's the biggest thing. Smell it. If it smells off, I ain't going to eat it. If it off gases when you open it, I ain't going to eat it. If it's got discoloration, sludge, or slime in it, I'm not going to eat it. If it's got bugs in it, I'm not going to eat it. Some of you might for added protein, but I'm not doing that. Simple as that. So it's I love hearing that canned goods are indefinitely good as long as they have no apparent issues. That's really what it comes down to. So remember that and have fun. Can on. Oh, well, no, save your cans anyhow. So, all right. What do we got next for you guys? Well, let's bring this one up. We've got another instance of Cookbook of the Collapse. This is from Thesia, otherwise known as Grandma's Homestead. We haven't had one in a little while, and that's not because she didn't send them to me. It's just simply because I took a 2-month hiatus from the podcast, as you know. And I was pretty excited to get back and share with you guys another one of her Cookbooks of the Collapses. Now, this all started many moons ago when I asked for submissions for things that you could cook and eat out of your pantry from your long-term food storage if and when something ever happened, like a collapse. And Thesia took it to the nth degree and said, guess what? I'm going to start sending you a video a month, and you can post them in your show. So if you haven't, give Grandma's Homestead a follow or a subscribe on YouTube. So let's check out what video she sent for us this week. And she's great. I love Thesia. She's an awesome lady. So here we are. Let's go at it here.
Hi, I'm Thesia Ellis, and welcome to Grandma's Homestead. And we are doing the next video in the series for cooking from the pantry, and we're going to do spaghetti. You're going, really, spaghetti? All you got to do is open a jar of tomato sauce or spaghetti sauce and cook up some pasta. And that is true. But what if you don't have pasta sauce? You need to learn how to make your own, and that's what we're going to learn how to do now. Making sure that your pantry is stocked with spices and herbs. So we've got onion, basil, parsley, Italian seasoning, garlic powder, oregano, and I've got 1 can of tomato sauce from the store, and I've got 1 can of sauce that Tom and I juiced and canned up last week. And of course, we've got our spaghetti. So we're going to make our own spaghetti sauce so that you can do it. And I'm also going to teach you a trick on how, because if I don't know, you've seen some other videos that I just kind of throw a handful there and a handful there, here and there to measure things. Well, I'm going to show you how you can learn how to do that on your own. All right, as you can tell, I've already got meat in it. We do meat. This is just some ground pork we have from a pig we had processed last year. And here's the store-bought tomato sauce and our home tomato sauce. I have to admit, I'm looking forward to seeing how that tastes. Okay, let's learn how to measure with our hands. What we're going to do, let's see, I know I'm about going to, let's do Italian seasoning. What we're going to do is we're going to take Italian seasoning. This is a tablespoon. And see what that looks like in your hand. That's what it looks like in your hand. That's a tablespoon. Okay? Let's say you want a teaspoon or something. Let's do onion powder. So here's a teaspoon of onion powder, and that's all that is right there. Okay? So once you learn how a teaspoon or a tablespoon looks in your hand, you can start dumping things and not have to worry about it. We do use a lot of Italian seasoning. So we're going to do, this is some oregano. And yeah, I know that oregano, some of this other stuff is already Italian seasoning, but sometimes we like to do a little bit extra stuff. Now, this is parsley, and I read somewhere that parsley, you don't want to put it in there immediately because it could turn bitter. I don't know if I got a bad taster or what the deal is. I don't have trouble with bitterness. Looks like I'm about out of basil. It's a good thing I got a backup in my pantry. So we got the basil there. Now we do a lot of garlic here. And I usually do either fresh garlic or I do the canned stuff where you can just scoop it out, but that's not what we're doing today. We're doing from the pantry. So that's everything we got here. I know the tomato sauce needs some salt too. And again, yes, they just once you learn what you need to do or what something looks like in your hand, then you can keep going with that. So we're going to let this simmer. I'm going to stir it real good. I'm going to let it simmer. The longer you let tomato sauce and stuff simmer, it does cook down and get a little bit thicker, but it also gives the herbs time to interact with each other and just taste really good. So while this is simmering away, we can start doing our water. Now, some people, like my son, prefers to have, they simmer for hours until it's almost a thick paste. I don't do it that long. Maybe it's because I don't know. This looks like a pretty darn good consistency. I think it's going to be pretty good. Got a little bit of crazy hair going. But so we're going to let this simmer. I'm going to taste test it after it gets all warmed up and nice and see if I need a little bit more of anything. That's what you should always do too, is once you learn how to cook with just throwing stuff in there, you also want to taste it, make sure you haven't done something really stupid. So let's let that simmer for a while and we'll start our water boiling for the spaghetti noodles. Isn't that beautiful and tasty? All right. I know you're thinking spaghetti still, but I just showed you how to make your own spaghetti sauce, very nicely tasting spaghetti sauce. And if you want to do something out of the pantry, that's fine too. But if you want something that tastes good, use that. And I also showed you how to measure with your hands. So that's all I got for this particular video for cooking from the pantry. My next video is going to be a little more, it's going to be a lot more, oh shoot, what's the word I want? It's going to take a lot more to it. I'm going to make cheesy chicken and rice, and everything's going to be from the pantry. And you're going, there's no cheese in the pantry. Yes, there is. So we'll check that out next time. Now, remember, if you have some good ideas for some recipes, send them to either to Tim's email address, or you can send it directly to me to theciaellis at email.com, gmail.com, excuse me, THECIAELLIS at gmail.com. And we're still going to get that cookbook together, but learn how to cook from the pantry and learn how to eat good while you're doing it. God bless, guys. I'll see you next time.
That Thecia is absolutely incredible. I just think the world of her. She comes up with some of the greatest ideas, and her stuff is so simple. She's the embodiment of Grandma's homestead. Not that she is, that much older than me by any means, but I love her name, and she is such a hard worker. So give her a follow over on YouTube, number one. But number two, like she said, if you can, send in some more submissions, because she's always looking for stuff. It started out, I was just going to read the recipes to you. And then, of course, a great thing about the workshop community was simply, hey, she reached out to me and she said, guess what? I would like to do videos and I'll commit to one a month. And I said, I would love to showcase you. She does great work. So anyhow, let's take a quick look. Had some comments come in here. Red Flyer Media says, I don't think I can make cornbread with measuring implements. It's all by hand like this. I heard it said many years ago that cooking's an art and baking's a science. You don't want to, can you experiment in both? Yes, you can. But you experiment in cooking and, you change your flavors a little bit. You might like it a little more, you might like it a little less. But baking is really a science experiment. You've got time, you've got temperature, and you have ingredients. And if you mess up on any one of those, you end up going from, a raised loaf of bread to something collapsed or something burnt or dilapidated in some way, shape, or form. So get out there and experiment in your cooking. Stray Kitten said, while we were chatting back and forth a little bit here, said, measuring with my hand intimidates me. And I agree. I don't disagree at all. The big thing is, seeing how Thesia did it, guys. She just put it in a measuring cup or a measuring spoon, dumped it in her hand to eyeball it. That really helped me put it into perspective how simple it really is. Simple as that. Stray Kitten also says, I tried to bring measuring cups and spoons when a Mexican neighbor was showing me how to cook something. She looked at them and like she'd never seen them before and wanted nothing to do with them. I believe it. And a Red Flyer Media says, Thesia is a sweet person. She really is. We've spent some time together at some in-person events, and I think the world of her. So give her a subscribe, guys. The link to the video tonight is in the description. I managed to streamline this process so you get links to every video and every article that I talk about throughout the week, and they're all in the description below. So what is next for us here, folks?
He's dead. They're all dead. Everyone. You and I are in a dead world. And I'm glad it's dead. I'm glad it's dead. Honky tonk of a world.
Coming up next is Wasteland.
This is a fun one. This is where we take a look at post-apocalyptic, dystopian, whatever you want to call it, pop culture, movies, video games, books. There was a lot of really good recommendations in the book club. If you've never followed, we have a book club page. We've stopped doing the live book discussions, but if you're looking for a place for good recommendations on literature, that's the place to go. Come by, join the regular Telegram group, which that link's in the description as well, and then we'll push you on to the right group from there. So kind of a thin week for post-apocalyptic pop culture news, but here we are. This one, Apple TV releases Silo Season 2 trailer. So if you haven't seen Silo, the first season was really good. I don't think Becky and I quite finished it yet, but Rebecca Ferguson is a great actress, and it's basically an underground skyscraper. And they've been in there for who knows how long, way longer than they were supposed to be. Very similar to just a few. It's like kind of the Bunker, the Fallout episode, the Fallout TV show, the Fallout video game. But this is based on a 3-book series, I believe. So if you haven't followed it yet, it's upcoming soon. Let's see when that comes out. Apple TV has released a trailer for season 2 based on Hugh Howey's trilogy of dystopian sci-fi novels. The second season premieres November 15th, with new episodes airing every Friday until January 17th. According to the official logline, Silo is the story of the last 10,000 people on Earth, their mile-deep home protecting them from the toxic and deadly world outside. Or is it? However, no one knows when or why the silo was built, and those who try to find out face fatal consequences. There you go. Simple as that. It's a great premise. I'm a huge fan of claustrophobic stories where you're in an enclosed space. Normally, these stories only involve a few people, but in this instance, you've got 10,000 people living in a silo underground. And of course, it's a mystery story. You don't really know what's going on, why it's happening, anything like that. But if you haven't checked it out yet, go back and binge season 1 on Apple if you have time. If you don't, winter's coming. And yeah, that's not a plug for going and binging Game of Thrones, because I did not. The final season completely shit the bed on that, guys. But if you haven't seen it yet, do yourself a favor and watch Silo if you have time and you're so motivated, for sure.
And you stay in the back room. And you keep your gun handy. Our country is still full of thieving, murdering.
Get ready. I read it on the internet.
I believe that's Chris Dixon's favorite stinger transition there, where our country is still full of thieving, murdering patriots. And that's never a more apt phrase been uttered, considering the time of year that my American brethren are going into, right? Templin Acres, good to see you over on the live chat. Welcome to the Delinquents. Here we are. So this week, pretty straightforward standard fare from Reddit. If you don't know what Reddit is, they used to call it the front page of the internet, and it's really just a souped up forum where folks share things. This group is Our Preppers. Love the group. I mean, I love the information I pull out of the group at times. And each week I go there and I pick one of the top trending stories from the past week to share some insight with you. This week's article or post comes from user AdBasic630. Growing up in the Ozarks of Missouri, very similar to abject poverty in Appalachia, we canned, built outhouses, raised livestock, and homesteaded just to survive. It wasn't a hobby, but just how you lived. I see a lot of prepping advice for SHTF by people who have a good idea but miss the single major determining factor. You ready? The big C word. I think we talked about that last week. Community. Now, some folks discover the idea of community and they think, I've never heard another prepper talk about community in my life. Well, you're wrong if you haven't, because that's a mantra around this area and a mantra amongst all the sundry communities that are, somewhat attached to our community. Have a plan with your neighbors. Use skills in the diversification of labor. You'll not survive on your own. Too many people spend time worrying about what weapons are best and how they might lone wolf the apocalypse. Is it just me, or do we all say that everybody talks about being the lone wolf, but we really don't know many people who are lone wolves or even want to be? I don't know. Maybe it's just one of those things that we all talk about. You should be more concerned about building a working relationship with those around you, to bring their expertise to bear as well. It'll take everyone's effort to harvest a field of corn or beans. Make friends. You need a plan to defend what's yours, obviously, but having 100 people around you as allies makes this easier. Amen to that. I don't disagree. And I don't think most preppers are going to disagree with that. I'm sure you've got a few of the, the dyed-in-the-wool 1980s survivalist type who said, nope, for my cold dead hands. Well, I get that. But here's the thing. You got spend time building community now. Get to know other folks who might be like-minded. And here's the best part about community. You don't have to agree on everything. You only have to agree on the important things, what's important to you, because that's what brings a community together. And then the rest doesn't really matter. It took me a while to figure that out, but it's true. All right, let's look at some of the responses from folks. There are no gods. That's one. 5 days ago, that's user. This actually seems to be the most commonly agreed upon fact around here, that community is one of the most important factors for survival. I don't disagree. Someone else said more like 50-50. The other half is hell-bent on the lone wolf. Don't let anyone know your prep approach. I don't see it as much anymore. Maybe it's just because I surround myself with folks who are into community oriented, and don't let others know your prep aren't mutually exclusive. Interesting. The gun nut preppers, I assume, will be wiped out by each other in the first couple of months. I like that term. I use it all the time. Not mutually exclusive. And they're not wrong. You can be community oriented, but not necessarily tell folks about everything that you have. You can still be a bit of a gray man and be involved in a community. Again, they aren't mutually exclusive. So yeah, simple as that. I'm not going to go any deeper into that one. It was just one of those stories that it was a slow news week on our preppers, but this was a good one. Community is one of those things that we got to, I've heard it said many a time before, if you beat a dead horse, all you get is a bigger mess. Well, sometimes you got to beat a dead horse so people hear it. But don't act like we don't talk about community. I guess that's the big thing, because we truly, truly do. All right, next, folks, if you guys remember, last week we started a new segment where we look at WROL, Without Rule of Law. And this is a card game that was given to me, a year or two ago now, by a friend of a friend, Spags. If you guys know Spags, a good friend of his, developed this card game, and him and I have done live renditions of this game at Self-Reliance Festival the last couple of years, so I decided to incorporate it into here. So I'm going to give you a scenario, and you guys can throw up your responses in the comments. Once we move through the next segment, I'll come back and read some of them. This is an easy one. These are out of the Emergency Preparedness Basics. So there's about 4 different segments of cards in here. All right, here we go. Scenario says, come up with your own stressful emergency preparedness scenario you wouldn't want to live through. I'll read that one more time. Come up with your own stressful emergency preparedness scenario you wouldn't want to live through. All right, throw it up there. I had some thoughts on this. We'll talk about it once we come back around to it, but give yourself some thought. Let me know what you think here. Bring them up. We're going to go into this week in the workshop here. Lone community. Lone Canadian says, heck, I've lived in a small community for over 20 years and nobody really knows what I do for a living. True. But you did reach out to me, and we're now part of an extended community, which makes me smile. I really appreciate that. And here's the thing. The community doesn't have to be completely local. I think we should have some local folks involved in our community, but I also don't think it should all be just an online imaginary internet friend community either. But yes, I love having you as part of my community now, Lone Canadian. And L2 Survive says, was I supposed to wait until you read the card? No problem at all. But throw up your responses there, and we'll come back to it. So let's slide into this week in the workshop. And this is basically where I take a look back on what I got done, the shit that I knocked off my GSD list this week. And it's not to brag. It's simply for two reasons. Number one, for me to have some accountability so that I don't just sit on my ass and rest on my laurels and do sweet dick all. But it's also hopefully to maybe inspire you guys to try some things that make you a little bit uncomfortable. Because, you know, I do that quite often. I hate to be too uncomfortable, but I certainly like to learn new things. All right, here we go. This week in the workshop. Just before Becky got home, I finished putting away the rest of the summer stuff, or almost the rest, because I was out in the yard the other day and discovered some of her fancy wall hangings are still on the outside of the fence. So they got to be put away. So this is your warning that if you live in an area where it gets cold enough to freeze your face, and if you don't pick up a dog toy by the end of November, there's a good chance it's going to be frozen to the ground and you're going to trip over it for the rest of winter. Or worse than that, you're going to suck it in, throw it out between your snowblower, and then you're going to have like discombobulated dog parts everywhere. I mean, like stuffed dog parts. So put your items away for winter if you haven't done it yet. Top up your hot tub or your pool if that's what you do. But we have a hot tub out back that we love to use in the wintertime. I just topped it up because it was down almost a solid foot. My son and his friends have been in there quite a bit lately, and so it needed to be topped up and the chemicals needed to be balanced. So, you know, that's something simple, and some people might say not needed. I get it. It's a source of stored water. It's a source of relaxation, and it definitely helps with the sore body at times. But I like to keep some extra chemicals on hand. We have a good stash of chemicals. The place we get them from has a sale once a year, so we buy them when they come on sale. We stock them up, and we have lots left over. Took Charlotte. Man, it has been a week for sports in the family. Friday and Saturday was a volleyball tournament. Last night was 3 games in town here, and then Saturday is a volleyball tournament as well. But then there's only one more tournament, and the first part of volleyball season's over for Charlotte. I'm going to miss the school league that she's in, but soon after that, club picks up. So there you go. Anyway, I picked up a new taper, which I don't think I've even posted online yet. I fell in love with this one that I bought at Home Depot. And if you don't know what it is, it holds a roll of painter's tape and a roll of painter's paper. And when you pull it out, it perfectly, and if you can see that with air quotes, attaches both, and you're able to tape off your baseboards really well. Then you put a drop cloth on top of the whole thing, and it's 100 times faster and easier for preparing. The problem is the one I got wasn't manufactured super well. It works, but it would get off kilter and the tape would come off the paper and different things. So again, I've said it before, buy yourself a tool, buy a cheap tool if you want to test it out. If you discover you're going to use it on a long-term basis, then buy yourself something nice. So that's what I did. Clark, I bought myself something really nice, and you'll probably see a review on it or at least some video on Instagram down the road. I cut up my firewood, not that I need any firewood at all, but I've had some 4 to 5 foot lengths of, thick tree branches and that sort of thing over the last couple of years, just piled up in a pile. It was time to get that put into firewood shape and size for the garage, because I do have a wood burning stove in there, a backup to a backup to a backup, right? I took Becky to the city for a doctor's appointment. Nothing out of the ordinary, just one of those things that needed to be done. Just keep your head on swivel when you're there. Don't spend too much money at Costco, that kind of stuff. Actually, speaking of head on a swivel, I was up in Lloydminster today working at the daycare. I went to Home Depot to get some supplies. I came back through, and I don't know. There's lots of names I could probably call the dude, but he was probably homeless and more than likely on some sort of medicinal type things. And he stepped right out in front of my vehicle. I didn't have to, slam it down, but he definitely would have been hit if I wasn't careful. And then he proceeded to walk across all 3 lanes of traffic. And this is a major highway that goes through the city. It does stop for a few red lights, but the dude stepped in front of somebody, they laid on the horn, and he just lost his ever-loving mind at him. I watched him over my shoulder through the rearview mirror, just making sure things didn't get too carried away. But it was every bit as scary as, well, not scary, but it was every bit as hot and hostile as when Brian Off-Grid Ping and I saw the guy hop out of his vehicle when we were in Savannah last spring, and it got pretty heated, guys. This was, I thought there was going to be a fight anyhow. So just always keep your head on a swivel. Picked up some battery lights at Costco and a small Leatherman that I'm testing out. It's quite a bit smaller for pocket size, but the lights are screw-in light bulbs. If you haven't seen these before, they fit any standard medium base fixture. They have a battery backup built into them. So if the power goes off, they click back on. I don't even think you notice. I'm going to do some testing. We'll do a video on those down the road. Sunday evening, I had a great live conversation with Ryan Buford. If you don't know him, he's Prepper Dad. If you haven't watched that replay yet, it was awesome. I think he's, other than Becky, he's probably the third most appearances on my show. He's a great friend. He's a guy, one of the first dudes that I really got connected with in the prepper space once I became a creator myself. And I consider him a friend. Anyhow, I wanted to say that show topped over 300 replay views. It's the first time any one of my lives have done over 300 views in the first week. So thanks for all the support, guys, and keep it up. They seem to be gradually climbing up. Last week's video, the battery gas pump, if you haven't seen it, that thing went wild. I think it's getting close to 8,000 views, which is way above a normal video for me, but the last 2 or 3 have done really well. Spent Tuesday putting together a diesel heater video. If you haven't seen that yet, do me a favor and watch that. Well, you don't have to, but I enjoyed putting it together quite a bit. It was somewhat by design. Chris Dixon messaged me a few nights ago and said, hey, have you tested out your diesel heater yet? And I had to say no, but it's a great idea for a video. And I'm glad I did it because now I know what it'll work for and what it won't. I got saved last minute by a fellow landlord, folks. We thought we had somebody lined up to move into our mobile home, and it had been, somebody had been in there for a year and a half, finally moved out, took great care of it. It was something that I completely renovated about 2 years ago. We had a guy lined up. He was about to move to town in about 2 days. He was just getting ready to send me the money, and I get a message from their landlord. They happened to see, just somehow, Facebook in its infinite wisdom posted my post from here and showed it to a lady in Saskatoon, so about 2.5, 3 hours away. She saw it and she immediately called my daughter. Her phone number must have been listed on the ad and said, hey, I need to let you know that they left my house in an absolute state of disrepair. And I thought, oh my goodness. And she said, not just a little bit. She said, the estimates I have right now are around $20,000. And I had reason to believe this lady because she didn't know me from Adam. And she just wanted to help out a fellow landlord. And so I messaged Buddy and I just said, hey, just letting you know, we're going to rent to somebody else. Have a nice day. No more discussions required. And I got a couple of follow-ups, which I just left alone. But whew, dodged a bullet there, folks. I'm not taking a chance. I'd rather leave it empty for a year than to rent to somebody like that. Also, here's a surprise, or not a surprise, but something that some of you might not have known. If you heard about it, John Willis and Amanda at Special Operations Equipment are having a Christmas party. Becky booked us flights for it. So we are going to go down. I think we're going to spend about 5 days in Tennessee. We're going to go for the 2 days at the SOE compound. I'm excited. Can't wait to see it. Curtis and I spent the day cutting drywall and hanging it for those gaps where we tore the walls out. So we're now ready to start mudding tomorrow. So what do we got left upstairs before we can paint? Well, probably 2 or 3 coats of mud. You know, mud, sand. Oh, not looking forward to it, but it has to be done. We have to trim the ceiling where there's a gap there now where there's drop ceiling, but the wall's gone where we removed it. And that's it. And then we're ready to paint. I am stoked. Another, I guess, 2 or 3 more work days, and I will be ready to start painting up there. And George, I see George over on in the comments. I'm going to get to that in just 1 second. One more quick thing, the train story. So I was heading home this evening and coming from Lloydminster. So George wants to know what part of the country I'm in. I'm about an hour south of Lloydminster, Alberta, right on the Alberta-Saskatchewan border. I'm a Canuck. Sorry about that. See, I had to apologize for being a Canadian. And I always watch when I'm coming south. There's a place where you're about a mile from the train tracks. You're up on a hill and you can see down to the train tracks. But there's a sign that gives you plenty of warning. And if it's blinking, I can hang a right and bypass the train. There's no difference in distance. It's just a little bit more twisty and turny, but it allows me to not have to wait for the train. So that tends to be what I normally do. But tonight I was coming down, I see the lights flashing. There's a train parked across the highway, which, number one, that's very rare. I've never seen a train stopped on that section of the highway. There's no place for, bypassing another train. There's no place there for loading or offloading. And it kind of threw me for a loop. And I thought, well, he stopped there for a reason. I'm going to hang a right and bypass it. So as soon as I turn right, I look down to the tracks, and there's a train coming in back up. There's a train that was heading in the opposite direction that is also parked on the tracks, and there's no bypass there. So you're less than probably about a quarter mile between the two trains, and they would have come to a stop facing each other. That is not supposed to happen. So I'm like, well, I'm going to bypass it. I don't know what happened. So I'm heading along, and after maybe 5 or 6 more miles, I come to yet another train that is stopped on the tracks heading that direction. So whatever happened there was a mishap with the signaling, the GPS. I don't know. It could have been really bad, and I'm glad it wasn't. But it definitely backed up the trains for a while. That is the busiest set of tracks in my area. It's the Trans-Canada tracks. It's also a double-decker track line. If you haven't seen it before, they stack storage containers or sea cans too high on those train tracks, and they fly. I've clocked some of those trains at over 90 kilometers an hour, which is over 50 miles per hour. So things could have went really hairy really quick. George, he says CN or CP. Now I need to apologize because the tracks that come through my town is one, and the tracks that go through about a half hour north of me is the other. And I can't remember which one it was, but I do know that the Via Rail train, which is the only passenger train in Canada, goes through there, and it goes through Wainwright a little bit further west. So anyway, it appears that what happened wasn't serious, but it could have been. So there you go. And it's good to have you here, George. I don't believe I've seen George Files in here before. So it's good to see you. Byron Roberts says, oh my God, you're Canadian. Yeah, I know. Didn't you remember when you sent me bourbon, brother? George says Wainwright. Yes, it goes west of, so the tracks go right through Wainwright, which is north of Camp Wainwright, which is the military base there where they do a lot of training exercises. So anyway, could have been bad. Thank God it wasn't. There you go. All right, before we go into our food for thought segment, I read this once already. Come up with your own stressful emergency preparedness scenario you wouldn't want to live through. And I got 2 responses, at least from the community that I saw here. And it said, Haas said a home invasion. And actually, that was the one that I had on my list. And I would say more even than just a home invasion, but a home invasion that involves my wife and kids. To me, it would be one thing to be home alone and have to get rid of an intruder, if you know what I mean. But man, I would not want to have to deal with it if the family was there as well. And One Step Closer says Civil War. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be part of that either. I wouldn't want to be part of your guys' Civil War either. So anyway, thanks for sharing that, guys. And L2 Survive said Jordan Peterson says to become a monster and learn to control it. If the wife or baby girl were held hostage or kidnapped, I fear I would lose that control. Funny, I didn't read that comment before I shared my comment before, but I'm absolutely that way. When we go to the city, I have forced myself to become better at situational awareness because I was not good at that. I'm not good at directional things. I wasn't good at keeping an eye out for threats. And I've gotten way better at it. And I think it helps to have a wife and we have 5 kids, but 3 are grown, but I have 4 daughters. So of course that gets you into dad mode too. And now I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it, but I've gotten a hell of a lot better. I notice, I look for things when I'm in the city. I make sure, the kids and the wife don't walk out in front of vehicles. I remind Becky to lock the vehicle when I go into scary places. I keep an eye out to make sure that the homeless guy up ahead around the corner isn't going to jump out and stick you with a syringe, that kind of stuff. Here's the thing. It doesn't mean that I enjoy life any less. I don't live in fear. I just hopefully keep my eyes open, if that makes sense. And George says, pretty sure that's CN. Right on. And Lone Canadian, this is great. My buddy Lone Canadian says, actually, Byron, he's Albertan. It's kind of Canadian, but with a redneck twist. Yes. I used to joke and say that Alberta is the closest to Texas you're going to have in Canada. And that is really, really true. We are if it's possible in Alberta, we are the most Canadian and the least Canadian all at the same time. I think we would gladly secede from the nation if we could, but we also have this crazy Canadian patriotism. I don't know. So there you go. And you're right. Albertan is definitely kind of Canadian with a redneck twist. Let's have some whiskey, bourbon with that. Here we go. All right, food for thought, folks. A couple of quick things here to show you. I had them on last week's list and didn't get around to sharing them with you. A couple of new products from DeWalt. And if you've been around any length of time, you know that I enjoy my DeWalt products, especially things that have to do with backup power and emergency preparedness. So here's the first one. This was linked on Reddit. All there is so far is a couple of pictures and some pre-order places. This is a 3-way 1,000-watt power inverter compatible with 20-volt batteries. I love it. Now, here's the thing. What does it do? This is an inverter that gives you an AC outlet, and it'll run off of 12 volts, so you can hook it up straight to your battery. It will run off of a DeWalt battery. And what's the third one here? I know there's 3. Yep. Oh, and a cigarette lighter. So you can plug it into a cigarette lighter adapter as well. So that gives you your 3 different types of power. Looking forward to this. I will grab a hold of this as quickly as I can and do some reviews on it for you, because this is right up my alley. DeWalt and prepping. Whew, can't go wrong with that. Now, speaking of DeWalt, yet another cool new product from DeWalt. This one has not a whole lot to do with preparedness unless you're looking at starting a handyman or landscaping business and becoming financially independent like we started to do and have done quite well with over the years. But I bought an Ego battery-powered backpack blower last year because it was the best one on the market. And finally, DeWalt has announced that they're putting out a 60-volt max brushless backpack blower kit. Pretty excited. It comes with 4 amp or 5 amp hour batteries. You get a pair with them. If it works as good as the DeWalt walk-behind snowblower that I bought last year, I'm down for it. So there you go. And finally, one more DeWalt thing, and this has to do with batteries, and of course, which is stored energy, which is something to do with preparedness in a sense, but I love DeWalt, and they are rebranding all of their 20-volt batteries. They're all going to the XR line, which I'm not exactly sure what the XR designate means, but here's the thing. So they have finally released a tabless battery. I didn't even know that that was the thing that people were looking for. It turns out that by going tabless, which I believe means those little welded on tabs aren't in there, you get significantly more power and a lot longer lifespan with these batteries. So they've now rebranded. The power stack is going to be XR Power Stack. And those are my favorite for small, compact form factor. They have the little pouch cells in there, which I have just had great luck with. And then these ones are going to be called Power Pack, and they are the tabless ones. And they're going to be the top of the line battery that you can get. It's going to have the most power and the longest lifespan, not longer runtime, but the most power and the longest lasting battery until it wears out. And yes, do I like DeWalt? I do. I always have. I can't help it. Simple as that. Now, if you guys are, last week we had an article where somebody put up some comments talking about, can we drink water from a dehumidifier? Well, I decided to see if I could find a credible source to go one way or the other for it. And I believe I found just that for you. Again, I'm always looking for great sources of, underutilized water, that sort of thing in a family residence. And this one here, this comes from McGill.ca. That's McGill University up here in Canada. I would say a fairly reputable source. Is water from a dehumidifier drinkable? Possibly, but why would you want to? That's the tagline. But when it comes down to it, the short answer and the long answer is yes. You just have to be careful. Whether water from a dehumidifier is drinkable depends on how clean you keep your tank. This is the things we talked about last week. How long the water has been sitting around. The water the dehumidifier collects is actually very clean water, comparable to distilled water. Let's consider for a minute how a dehumidifier works. Think of it as a refrigerator with the cooling coils exposed to the air. Okay, makes sense? Water vapor from the air condenses on the coils and drips into a tank. The condensed water is pure because when the water originally evaporated into the air, it left its impurities and minerals behind. So providing your coils are clean, you could collect the dripping water and drink it. But if the water sits around in the tank, it can provide a hospitable medium for growth of bacteria and molds, making it unfit for drinking. So regular cleaning of the tank minimizes this problem. Simple as that. So can you drink it? Yes. Can you make water out of thin air? Yes. Are there dangers inherent in the process? Also, yes. But I think we're all adults here. And I would say that, simple as that. If you want to do it, but be careful. George says, was a big fan of Ego. Great products, but batteries are so damn expensive. I don't disagree, George. So I love the backpack blowers that Ego has made. It is the closest thing that I've been able to find to the steel gas-powered ones that I had when I had my handyman business, my snow removal business. I loved them, but I wanted to go with something where it's just pull a trigger and go. The Ego is great. However, I'm only a year into this, and I'm already running into problems with one of my batteries. I'm not sure what happened to it, if it got like completely depleted of charge. I'm not really sure, to be honest, but I went to bring it out the other day and use it. It's the first time I've used it since last winter. One battery was perfectly fine, and one was showing red, and it wouldn't charge. It wouldn't charge. I left it on the charger overnight and nothing. So I flipped it over to the other side, and it appeared to take a charge. Finally, it took a full charge. I put it on my blower, and there is something wrong with that battery. I can't quite figure out what I should do with it. It wants to run, it pulls some juice out of it, and then it stops. So I may have to do a video on doing a warranty claim from Ego. But yes, their batteries are immensely expensive. All right. Bonnie Blue wants to know why you would go with brushless tools. And one of the biggest things is the fact that there's no actual wearing in a tool. So with old motors, and I'm not perfect at this kind of thing to explain it. I'll find you an article here in a minute, but most of the traditional motors had magnetic brushes that were made out of, I want to say a carbon. I'm not sure if that's exactly what it was, but over time it would wear, and then eventually the brushes would wear out and you'd have to replace them. So number one, going with the brushless tool means that there's one less wear point, and it's something you're never going to have to tear apart. So again, since companies don't want you to have to do that kind of stuff. So here we are. What are brushless tools and why does it matter? Let's see if we can bring this guy up right quick here for you. Let's bring it up. We'll share it. There you go. As the name suggests, brushless tools have a motor that works on electric communication instead of brushes and commuters to transfer power. It makes them more efficient and durable. So here are the benefits. There's 7 of them real quick. Increased efficiency. Brushless tools use energy more efficiently. Less energy is lost via heat and friction, so that makes sense. More power and torque. The optimized energy usage allows brushless motors to provide up to 50% more torque. Longer motor life without brushes causing friction. The rest should be self-explanatory. Less maintenance. Brushless tools require less maintenance and overcome the need to replace brushes. Like I'd mentioned, quieter operation. That's something I overlooked. Brushless tools produce less noise because there is no brush friction. Simple. Lightweight design. There are fewer components in brushless tools, so they're more compact and lightweight. Like my ultra-compact DeWalt impact driver. Love it. And finally, advanced performance. Leading brands such as Makita, gee, I wonder if this was written by Makita, use custom brushless motors engineered for specific tools. There you go. So yeah, they're just all around a little bit better. Lone Canadian says, I've been a DeWalt guy for over 20 years, but all the guys in the patch seem to have switched to Milwaukee. I would say overall, over the last couple of years, 3 to 4 years, Milwaukee has definitely expanded into the specialty tools market. And if you're looking for a very specific use case for a tool, Milwaukee's become the place to go. However, DeWalt is trying really, really hard. I also found an article earlier today on the all of their landscaping gear. They're upgrading every bit of it, all going to 60-volt stuff. I'm excited because I have all of my landscaping gear is coming on 5 years old now, and it's all still working, and I love it. But I'd love an excuse to upgrade to the 60-volt stuff, the max volt. Byron Roberts says the water from a dehumidifier would make good flushing toilet water. Absolutely. L2 Survive says they recycle urine and sweat, clean it, and then drink it on the International Space Station. Absolutely. Do I want to do it? Nah, probably not. But Bonnie Blue says, thank you, Tim, for the stuff on brushless tools. And oh my goodness, we got Rachel Brown in here, guys. Checking in on my way to bed. Stay safe, y'all. Like and share. Yes, like she always says, do the free thing and do it. There you go. All right. So last segment, or close to the last segment of the day.
It's the apocalypse. End of days. The judgment day. The end of the world, my friend.
Let's dig into community mail.
And this is where I take some of the top comments. Most of them end up coming from YouTube because that is where I get the biggest amount of interaction. So and it was actually gonna say that. So George just said, what other platforms you're on? I'm not seeing those other messages. So, George, you might be. So right now we're only live on 2 different YouTube channels. So you're probably on my backup super secret YouTube channel that the live streams are eventually going to move over to. However, if you'd like, I'm going to, if you check in the description of every video I make, all my links are in there, but I'm going to share a couple for you. So the main one, first off, is the YouTube channel, and that's Toolman Tim's Workshop. That's where I think we got just hit 21,000 subscribers over there. So if you're on the smaller platform, that's why you're not seeing most of these comments, I'm guessing. So here's the main one, youtube.com/c/Toolman Tim's Workshop. I think I could actually shorten that a little bit, but there it is. And then the other one, if you're on Telegram, folks, and this is the big one, this is where we interact multiple times a day. I think there's like 265 folks, what we call delinquents in there, people that have become part of the workshop community, the greater community as a whole. So if you're part of Telegram, join this group right here. This is t.me/Toolman Tim's Workshop. And that's the place to go. It's where all the cool kids hang out, but not really. It's the place where we ask questions, we encourage each other, we bust each other's balls, we give each other advice, warranted or unwarranted. But really, it's just the place that the workshop community has congregated. I tried a lot of different platforms over the years. And hello, George. Now he sees us. Good to have you. And yeah, I've tried a lot of different communities over the years, but I'm a huge believer in throw things at the wall and see what sticks. And what stuck with us was Telegram. I didn't expect it. It kind of just happened. And it's become the place where we all get together. And it's also relatively censorship free, and hopefully will be slightly protected, and a great place. Byron says it's a great group of people. I agree. 100% I agree. Now, for anybody out there who's new, if you haven't joined yet, when you click join, the big thing is you won't get in right away. We have to approve you. And that's simply to keep all the crypto scammers out. All we do is ask you a question. Hey, who are you? And how'd you find us? And if you answer right, then we bring you in. That's all. Simple as that. All right. So community nail bag. And that's where we reach into the nail bag and see the good, the bad, and the ugly comments from this week. Now, they're all pretty good, but this one here, this one comes from Warrior Link 8612. And they said, if I run my generator's dirty power through a power inlet to my house breaker box, will that clean up the power as it runs through each breaker and into the house? So we're talking about a generator with dirty power. So like my tri-fuel Furman generator has a THD, that's a total harmonic distortion of above or beyond 10%. And if you don't know, pure sine wave power looks just like a perfect sine wave. And if you took physics back in the day, you'll know what that is, but it's just a perfectly round sine wave. Now, traditional open frame, non-inverter style generators tend to be fairly clean power when there's no load on them, but the more load, the more jagged and the more out of sync the waveform becomes. So that's why you'd go with an inverter generator, because it will give you a full sine wave even under a full load. So this person wants to know, will it clean it up by running it through my breaker panel? No, not at all. You're not going to improve it one bit, because it's the same as household power. If there's something wrong with the power coming into the home from the power lines, your system at the house is not going to clean it up. So you have to have clean power going into it. Now, there is a workaround for smaller things. You could take the power from a generator, and then you could charge a battery, like a 12-volt battery, or a solar generator, and then you could use that if the solar generator gives out pure sine wave power, or you could use an inverter, a pure sine wave inverter, to pull that power out. That's a way to convert it. There you go. All right. Yellow Dog 762JB. Man, I love these names. Said, well done video. And this was talking about 2 weeks ago when I did the pump video on diesel, well, gas and that sort of thing. And I showed those cool little adapters that allowed you to put a AA battery inside a C or a D sleeve, both made by Eneloop. They said, well done video. AA and D batteries are both 1.5 volts. The Ds just have more storage capacity. There are adapters similar to the ones you've used that hold 2 or 3 AA batteries, and others that use AAA batteries to adapt C to C-size batteries. So if you've never seen them, the reason I put this in here was so that it would remind me to talk about those. I don't have them in here. They're out in the workshop. But you can buy them on Amazon. And if you're like me and you've standardized on mostly AA and some AAA, but occasionally you need a D or a C battery for some Christmas decoration your wife buys, or in this instance, some weird gas pump that I bought, you can get these sleeves that you can throw a AA battery inside, and Bob's your uncle. There you go. All right. Next comes from KC Field 1. And they said, hey, Tim, we just upgraded our electrical to 200 amp and put in an interlock so that we can power our home with gas or multi-fuel generator in an outage. My HVAC guy said we have to get a generator that runs at a constant 60 hertz or the furnace will show an error code. Again, 60 hertz, that's cycles per second, and you want a nice smooth waveform for that. Will show an error code and not run. I was told that an inverter generator is best for keeping the hertz constant. I'm considering a Westinghouse EcoGen 1000 inverter generator with a CO sensor and wondered if you thought that was a good option. It has less than 3% total harmonic distortion, hosts about 2,000 square feet. Thanks so much, and thanks for your videos. Yes, that would be a great one. Traditional household power runs between 1 and 3% total harmonic distortion. So it's not perfectly clean either. So if you can get a inverter generator that gets you under 3% total harmonic distortion, then go for it. And if Westinghouse lists it as that, I mean, do your own research as far as that goes, but typically what they show is going to be pretty close to what it is. And finally, this one is from Salty Brackish Fresh. What a name. I love it. Said, I'm getting one, a generator, that is. I really like this, guys. Check this out. I'm getting a generator. I'm buying it myself with my own money for my family. I'm 21 years old. It blows me away that my family are just sitting ducks. They complain about a 1-hour power outage, yet don't have the will to even look up a video or go buy one. I don't want to talk crap about my parents, but damn, they are dumb sometimes. Just waiting for something bad to happen in order to take action. All right, I get it. Number one, Salty Brackish, if you end up hearing this, proud of you. At 21 years old, you're taking preparedness by the nuts and you're running with it. So good for you. I get it. We get frustrated with our parents sometimes. You know, I talk to my parents. My parents bought a generator, and then my dad rarely keeps any gas on hand. So then when the power goes out, they still got to go and find some gas. So I get it. Doesn't mean that I love them any less. It just means that they're not as prepared as I am or you guys are, and they need a little prodding. But man, good for you. As long as you can afford it, you've got the money in your budget, then yes, go out, get yourself a generator. I love hearing that. I'd love to hear follow-up from you. So, all right, guys, that brings us to the end of our segments for this week. I got a couple of quick announcements, nothing too out of the ordinary. Number one, like I mentioned, I'm going to the Special Operations Equipment Christmas Party. So if you're going to be around and you want to have a delinquent get-together, I'd love to see you. I don't believe there's any cost for admission. It's just, you know, if you know, you know. And also, Haas says, hey, George, welcome. And yes, George, you are definitely welcome to the workshop. Great to have you. And if you know where Wainwright is, I'm guessing you're probably somewhat local. And if you want to communicate behind the scenes, let me know. Just you can comment on a video or come join the Telegram group and PM me. But I'm one of those crazy people that want to actually meet folks in real life. So if you're connected to the area in any way, shape, or form, I'd love to meet you, and I'd love to introduce you to a bunch of other fellow Albertans that I know, Albertans and Saskatchewanians, I don't know. Anyway, it's good to have you in here. Number two, Sunday evening. So this is where the podcast gets a little weird for this time of year, and I hope you guys enjoy it. But it is spooky season, All Hallows Eve or Halloween pretty soon. And we have a couple of we have 3 Halloween episode. Sorry, let me try this again. 3 Halloween themed episodes coming up right away. So number 1, fellow delinquent Will, or Worm. He's a filmmaker. Love the dude. We broke bread and hung out at Delinquent's Gully Days this year. He's coming on Sunday night, and we are going to talk about horror movies. We have a great conversation. We'll probably talk about filmmaking and stuff as well. So if you're into that sort of thing, or you like a change for Halloween, please come by and listen. It's going to be fun. We did it last year. You come back this year. Number 2, Mrs. Toolman is going to come on an episode again. She's been busy building the life we want to live and going balls to the wall in the daycare. But her and I, sometime next week, are going to do an episode about our favorite Stephen King films. I'll spoil it for you right now. Number 1 is going to be The Stand, and you know that because that's my favorite, the 1990s miniseries. Anyhow, so that's coming up, and then of course, as close to Halloween as we can get. What next Sunday evening will be the 2nd annual Toolman Tim's Toolbox of Horrors. And if you wonder where that name come from, well, it's really inspired by Art Bell. And if you guys watch Coast to Coast AM, listen to Coast to Coast AM back in the 90s and early 2000s, Art Bell was a staple of conspiracy-based, sci-fi-based AM talk radio. And every year he would change his show on Halloween from Coast to Coast to Ghost to Coast. And so we're going to do the 2nd annual Toolman Tim's Toolbox of Horrors. So there you go. L2 Survive says, I'm only 14 hours and a border from you. Is that local enough? Well, for me it is, because that's what I call a Sunday afternoon drive. But no, I quite often drive down to the Montana border for my American mailbox. But yes, that is pretty good. George asks, do you go live daily? No. I would love to have the ability to go live daily, but we are very busy. Again, I joke, but a big part of preparedness in my mind is entrepreneurship, because the reason that is a few things, but it brings you independence and financial freedom. So my wife and I have multiple businesses that we keep going. So short answer is no. I go live Thursday and Sunday evenings, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Thursday is This Week in Prepping, and Sunday is typically an interview with somebody from around the preparedness sphere. I have lots of interesting people. I've interviewed authors and filmmakers, documentarians, all kinds of great folks. So if you want, hang around, set your notification bell to ring, but whatever, yeah. And L2 Survive says, MON, that spells Halloween. And if you know, you know. Good old Tom. So anyway, folks, it's great to have you. George, it was great to have a new folk in here. Love finding folks that are semi-local, and I just love finding like-minded folks. So I'll be here. We'll see you Sunday evening with Worm. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.